Like, sometimes I think, you say, well, we're going to, run a course on end people pleasing. And it seems so, in some ways, it seems so innocuous. It seems like, oh yeah, people please. Like it's not, it's kind of a benign sort of, identity, I think, to most people. But what I notice in your responses is that it kind of includes, it's all encompassing. And the more I get into this, the more I realize that um, there's a lot of books written about it out there, and they give you a lot of behavioral tips as if it's just a matter of new new behaviors. But for me, coming to realize that it's complete identity, and it's a complete construction of an ego based on the premise of, if I were tonight, anyways, the word that comes to me based on the assumption, unconscious though it is, of not being legitimate. So, and so much of what you've written, like when you list the benefits and you look at what's the opposite of that, which would be people pleasing, so many of it connect to this. The reason that we do it is because we just don't feel legitimate or valid. Whether it's basing choices on the opinions and expectations of others. The agency is related to legitimacy, sovereignty, authenticity. It's like we have an inherent right to be ourselves and to express ourselves. And when Michelle says knowing who I am and what I want, yeah, man, it doesn't get much more bedrock than that. How we, there's a quote by Kierkegaard who he talks about the tragedy of how the self, the tragedy of the loss of self, and how, if it's the loss of anything else, like he talked about the loss of a limb or the loss of $5 or the loss of a marriage, it's noticeable. But the loss of self just kind of slips away into a mist. And before we know it, we have, in response to, mistreatment of one sort or another, we've let ourselves slip away. And when you think about that, when you feel into that, it's like it's hard to name like a greater tragedy or a waste of life is is that because the self slipped away at some point, probably very early, we were living somebody else's life and calling it our own until we wake up one day and realize, you know, it it wasn't our own. So to feel and as I've said before, just to review, if indeed this is where I've come to, the purpose of life is to express yourself. The simplest, you know, that's where I've come to around purpose. You don't really need to search for it. But the reason we're all searching for it, I think, or many of us have been searching for it, is because the self slipped away. And so, in the absence of self, we go on a search for purpose and a search for meaning. I would say, in the absence of self expression, it's kind of the same thing, because if the self didn't slip away, that would be our life. We're just expressing ourselves and sort of The spiritual dimension of that for me is that whatever, you want to call the source out of which we all emerge, um, and that we are manifestations of in these bodies, this time and this place. So, we are that and we are ourselves. We are that. And this is the mystery of the non-dual thing. It's like we're that in this form. I am persuaded. And so that can only know itself as you or I if we're fully expressing ourselves. And that's also, from a spiritual level, part of the tragedy of letting the self slip away and not recovering it. Is that there's a spiritual dimension to this, which is felt as the loss of purpose. It's experienced as just being unmoored, not knowing what we're doing here. What's it all about? But my own experience is that when I'm doing me, that question kind of fades. In one of my Facebook ads, when I was kind of, marketing this course, the opening hook, that's what they call it in this salesy culture. The opening hook was, "I'm really glad I lived your life," said no one ever on their deathbed. And for whatever reasons, I think that's the Facebook doesn't tell you, but they shut my account down for whatever reasons. I'm still waiting for it to open back up, but I think that really resonated with me, and it resonated with a fair number of people as well. So, just congratulations to you for having the courage to go to not let yourself, your heart self, slip away, for digging in and doing the work, which is not always easy, as you've discovered, and I certainly have discovered it as well. But like I feel gratitude towards you for showing up as if you actually matter, as if you are legitimate. And that realization, I think there's no more important realization to come to before we die. To me, that may be my true definition of enlightenment or true awakening. It's just that if each person really got deeply, like really deeply, that and proceeded in life as if they mattered, as if they were of consequence, and that the universe couldn't be the universe without them, without you. And it just can't be. It's like if we go AWOL, then the universe is incomplete. And this is why I don't know if you I sent out a newsletter about, this being the season of Christmas and the whole narrative of Jesus' birth. And it's a beautiful story, it's a beautiful myth. But what I really got some time ago was it was meant to be kind of an archetypal or paradigmatic story for how every human birth should be treated, and a description and an articulation of the miracle of every soul's birth, every incarnation. So it's not about the incarnation, it's about incarnation itself and the miracle of that. And what would the world be like now if every mother sang Mary's song, the Magnificat? My soul magnifies the Lord, which Mary being a Jew, it goes back to Samuel's mother, who first sang that song about Samuel. So it's part of the lineage, the ancestral lineage of the richness of the Judaic tradition, that it got this sense of how every birth is a magnificat, is magnificent. And so in the story of Jesus' birth, you get like the cosmos participates in it. The stars align and shine down and say, hey, it's like, whoosh, here we go, right in the stable. It's like, whoosh, spotlight on this birth, Jesus of Nazareth. He's a peasant, born to peasant parents, but it has cosmic significance. Nature participates in the legend. All the cows and the cattle, gather around for the birth. And those who do watch the stars and who know the ways of the cosmos, the magi, the wise ones from Persia, they see the stars aligned and they bring gifts and they lay them at the feet of Jesus. But it's not just about Jesus. Like if we as human beings realize the significance of this little one that came into the world, it would be like wise men, magi, would be showing up from distant lands across foreign borders to show up with gifts to lay at the feet of you and you and you and you and you. Such is the significance and legitimacy of your incarnation. And then, of course, any good story has the dark side, and it's the story of Herod, so-called King Herod and the kingdom of Caesar, who discovers, that one has been born whose light is being recognized by the parents and by the cosmos and by the shepherds and by the magi. And Herod does what dominators do, and he proclaims a genocide on all male children under 2. It's a very dark thing because his power is being threatened. But you could just take the Herod figure, the Herod archetype, as a stand-in for the collective ancestral trauma that doesn't recognize the light that is born when you were born or I was born, doesn't see the light, and instead unleashes a terrible violence, a terrible trauma upon the land, and does everything they can to snuff out the light. And in most cases, the self slips away because of this trauma, and it's not remembered. And then we don't really know who we are. And we proceed in the world as if we don't matter. And everyone thinks this is just normal. But don't see the tragedy of this. But then you get to the prologue of John's gospel. It's all about the light shines in the darkness. The light has arrived. There's tremendous darkness. There's this Herodian forces at work in the world to snuff out the light. But, as it says, the light has not overcome it. And so for you to do the work of refusing to let yourself slip away, refusing to let the darkness snuff out your light, is like heroic. It's a heroic journey you are making. And, you know, nature, the cosmos, God celebrates. You know, I think the angels get together as in the gospel story and they start singing. It's like, okay, they're back. Another one. Another one is saved, to use that language, you know, but it's not saved in that traditional Christian sense. But another one knows their intrinsic radiance. Another one's light is shining. Another one's free to express themselves. Another one knows they're legitimate. And everything changes when that happens. This illegitimate birth. I mean, remember, Jesus was declared illegitimate. That's part of the gospel story. But this illegitimate one was recognized as being God in human form. The sort of absolutely legitimate. And that's kind of the story of the gospel in a nutshell. Like the illegitimate one is seen to be legitimate. The light shines in the darkness and the ripples go up from this center of light and into the darkness. And I just think I want, like, each of you is that, like, I truly think this is what's going on. Each of you is that light. But if we and so that's the work of removing all the layers that they're claimed to snuff out the light, but the light never actually goes out. And it is some kind of gracious process. It's some kind of grace involved in, like, who knows why you're doing it, but you're doing it. You're called to do it. It's like that itself is a mystery. Many aren't. You are, like, that's amazing. So it's kind of a miracle. This miracle of theologians would talk about it as predestination. Well, why are some called to awaken and some aren't? No one's ever come to a decent sort of conclusion about that or a good answer for it. But so each of you, that's what I say, is a divine light. And by shedding this people pleaser ego, and knowing deeply that you who had been declared illegitimate by the ones who were supposed to see your legitimacy and magnify it, have reclaimed your true nature, your divine nature. So you are the Christmas story, whether you're Christian or Jewish or secular or Hindu, or it's like, it doesn't matter. It's a story, when properly understood, that is universal. Okay. Wow, I talked for